We did it, Becky. We're back.
We're back.
Where are you right now?
I'm in New Orleans for the Vets 26 conference. It's in full
What
swing right now.
what is it?
It is the National Veteran Small Business Coalition. They do a conference every year. This year, they're really focusing on government contracting, and it's really a lot of good information. It started last night, and then they had their big main session today. The SBA presented on a lot of different things. Really, really great information. If you can come next year, it'll be in New Orleans again.
Yeah, I think I'm going to make that investment. Check it out for sure.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we have a great conversation today, don't we? Who
Yes,
do
we
we
do.
have? Who do we have today? I have no clue.
We
No, I'm just kidding.
Surprise! We have an incredible speaker today that is near and dear to my heart. She's talking about a topic that she's a phenomenal expert in, and it's something that big businesses do and small businesses kind of think that they're too small to do sometimes, or they don't think they have the time to put in, or the time or the resources to put into continuity planning. It's a big topic. It's a big
Yeah,
topic.
it is business continuity, and I don't want to steal our guests' thunder, but it is something that just big corporations, like you said, think that I mean, it's for big corporations, like the small guy, the solopreneur, the small business. Sometimes, a lot of the times, almost every time, they think that they don't need this thing. And sometimes they think they confuse it with other things. So,
Yeah,
anyways, with that being
yeah, for
said,
sure.
I think we
Let's
should
bring on
bring.
Erica.
Let's
Yeah,
just
let's
bring
bring
her
on
on.
Erica. Yeah,
No one wants to hear us
Erica.
talk.
Erica is one of our Strive instructors at the Veteran Business Resource Center in our Women's Strive program, which is a build your business course. But she's also been a corporate attorney. She's been a JAG officer, and she's now a leader in her community as well as the business. You're budding as a growing business community thing across the nation for EAAS consulting. So congrats on that. And we're excited to
Awesome.
talk to you about your continuity planning.
I'm always excited to talk about it because, one thing I'll correct that Ryan said, it's not that small businesses don't think they need to do it. A lot of small businesses don't even know what it is.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
they're missing out.
Bingo.
They're missing out completely. And there's like no barrier. There's no like, you need to be this tall to ride this ride to start business continuity. It's for everybody, regardless of your size.
Yes.
I'm glad you're
absolutely.
here to explain that, because sometimes I think maybe I don't need that. Becky doesn't need that, but in reality,
Definitely do.
100%.
So who are you, Erica? Like, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself before we go into this like very deep topic?
That is a very deep question that you want a very shallow answer.
Okay, there we go.
So I'll do a Reader's Digest version of who I am. So New York City native. I was a corporate lawyer in New York City for about 7 years before. What I first started doing was doing pro bono for veterans. And I was like, you know what? I'm actually using my law degree for something good. And then the world economy collapsed in 2008, and my clients were the ones responsible for it. And I was like, oh, this feels icky. Let me go into this veteran help thing. And I took a $70,000 pay cut and joined the active duty JAG Corps because I wanted to help veterans. And every day would have been the ideal version of that. And then I wound up being thrown into a lot of emergency management type of situations with being the EOC legal advisor. They're like, don't worry, it's an extra duty. It's one meeting a quarter, which is a lie, because when 2 weeks later there was a natural disaster, they're like, hey, Erica, the general needs you. I'm like, okay, great. So that's kind of the genesis of where I got into doing all the risk and emergency management, crisis management type of stuff. And it just happened everywhere else I got stationed. I was in charge of Dom Ops, or national security law. So, in JBLM in Washington State, it was wildland fires. Then in Afghanistan, everything is a disaster every single day. So there's that. And then when I was stationed in Natick, Massachusetts, it was a pandemic. So I've definitely got my feet wet in a lot of different types of disasters, and my brain is hardwired to see very terrible things. And I use it to the benefit of businesses because I think businesses deserve to survive. I think dreamers need to have their dreams supported. And a lot of times they're shooting themselves in the foot by not knowing what it is that I teach or what it is that I will consult on. So to that end, I wrote my first book for mom and pop shops because my marketing research showed very early, they're like, we don't have time for this. I'm like, well, you have time to read a 120-page book. And then from there, I just grew and have a whole bunch of different clients of various sizes, solopreneurs, an engineer that is the only person in the world that does what he does. I work with nonprofits. I work with financial advisory firms in various parts of the country. One of my clients is in France. So everyone needs this.
Well, this is a perfect segue then, or not a question really, is what is the biggest misconception about business continuity for business owners?
I'm good. I think I got this because it's there's a lot of things, and I think when I still distill it down to very basic things that people can understand. So, for example, like car insurance, people understand car insurance, but when I talk about business continuity, because it's a new concept, even though the idea is the same, they're like, I don't really get that. That's foreign to me. So, with car insurance, first of all, would you buy a car, brand new car, drive off the lot and not have insurance? And they're like, no, of course not. I'm like, okay, so why would you not protect your business the same way by doing what I do? Are you telling me that your car is more important? They're like, absolutely not. I'm like, but you're acting like you are. Same thing with car insurance is if you have a car insurance policy, does that mean you're not going to get into an accident? Absolutely not. And if you do get in an accident, are you made whole instantly? You are absolutely not. So relying on something like that, it's not an alternative to business continuity. It is something completely different that if done right and you have the right policy and the right circumstances, it'll be a financial bridge eventually. So the first thing, like, yeah, I got this. I don't have to worry about it. I got insurance. I'm fine. No. So.
Sorry. So talking through a couple of these things, what's been your biggest surprise? And then I would love to turn the time over to you to have you kind of run through some thoughts that you've been having. I know you prepared a few things that you're going to go through, which are going to be huge. But what's been the most surprising thing that you've discovered when in doing this work and starting your business? What's been the most surprising thing to you in the continuity space?
I'm surprised for various reasons, for lots of different things. I'm surprised at how certain people want to put something like this on the back burner, even when they have a quantifiable loss. So there is one company, they lost $250,000 every week for 2 weeks straight because a hurricane had come through and impacted their operations. And they still haven't invested in business continuity to make sure that doesn't happen again. And I'm like, man, I wish I had a business that could lose $500,000 in 1 month and still not invest in shoring it up. I'm surprised at like the nonprofit that I'm working with right now. They reached out to me saying, hey, we're looking to grow and also maybe eventually sell in about 8 years. Is this something we want to do? I'm like, wait, I'm sorry. You're being super proactive. I almost never get super proactive. And they're like, yeah, we know it's really important. I said, okay, cool. And they went, and by the way, do you ever like offer a service where you come back and help update, annually or something? And I was like, I'm sorry, who are you? And do you have any friends? And can you introduce me to them? Because how do you even know already that this is supposed to be a living document, that it's not static? So that's another thing that's surprising. Something that surprises me is the disconnect between the CEO and the COO or the CFO. So when the CFO or the COO are advocating to the CEO, hey, we really need this. I mean, because the CEO and the CFO are entrusted by the CEO to look over operational stuff. And then the CEO is like, yeah, I think we could put a pause on this. And I'll have the COO come back to me and be like, everything is in his head. If something happens to him, we're completely screwed. And I'm like, I can't make your CEO do something he doesn't want to do. And that's, right. So there's, I get surprised for a variety of things in what I do.
Yeah, that's interesting because then you're not only, you're saying, let's get your continuity planning going, but you're also teaching them how to advocate for being able to do that, which is interesting.
Yeah.
That's surprising. That is surprising.
Yes.
But you've also written a couple of books about this.
Yes. Yeah. So I mentioned the first book called How to Not Kill Your Business. And that is written in layman's terms because one of the things I did when I was a JAG officer for legal assistance is I wrote a legal corner in the Guidon at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, our local newspaper, about, hey, here's some common things is what you need to know. I felt it was really important to educate people about stuff. So when they came in, they could be a true partner in doing what they needed to do. And then when I was teaching, I'm also a professor of emergency management for a graduate program at the University of Texas in El Paso. Somebody had mentioned to write a book, and they said, do case studies, get in Harvard Business Review, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, ugh, this doesn't sound like something I want to read, let alone write. And my students were like, we love you as a professor because you don't talk like one. I was like, what? Like, yeah, you talk like a person with real experience. And we really appreciate that. And I was like, okay, I'm going to write the book the way I talk. So I've even had some pushback from some mentors who had worked with FEMA. They're like, why did you use these words? Because FEMA says this. I'm like, well, I'm not FEMA and neither are the people reading the book. So let's get them. I'll worry about the proper terminology later if I need to. I just care about the concepts. So the first book is the how to do business continuity, things you need to know, things you need to think about. The second book I wasn't planning on writing, but because I live in Asheville, North Carolina and suffered through Hurricane Helene, it became very obvious to me that people were very, very angry. And I'm like, oh, you have no idea how any of this stuff works. Like they were angry that FEMA wasn't there within 12 hours. I'm like, oh, no. They shoot up the cluster flare once the local says we're tapped out. And then the state has to say we're tapped out and then ask the federal and then get permission to come down. Plus the fact that the roads were blocked from landslide. You couldn't get in or out. So I'm like, they're not coming till at least Monday. They did show up on Monday. So, and then even the way people talk about risk is wrong. It's not explained. The language of risk was created by civil engineers when they talk about a flood zone or floodplain. It's not meant for weather people. It's not meant for politicians. It's not meant for us. So when they say it's a 1,000-year flood zone, you may think, oh, every 1,000 years this happens. It's like, no, it actually can happen every 2 years. And then if we look globally, there was a 1,000-year flood. It was Helene and Milton. And then you had a flood in France and you had a flood in Spain. And that within 1 month, globally, there were like 4,000-year floods. So like that shouldn't mathematically make sense. It's because people don't understand risk. So my second book was about that. And the people who've read both said the second book is probably better to read first because it tells you why you should care. And then the first book tells you how to do it.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. I've read your books. Yeah, they're amazing. They're really fun to read. And just so everybody on here knows, Erica will explain things in a way that you probably wouldn't expect her to. With her corporate attorney background and everything. She is a very real down to earth and really not afraid to tell you how it is. So Erica, I'm going to turn it to you so you can share some of this wisdom because it's a lot better than what I could provide. So go ahead.
I don't think it's better than you can provide, Becky. It's just different than you can provide.
Yeah.
Okay. So my first piece of life advice for business advice is, what we all learned as a kid is when you're crossing the street, you look both ways. And that's the same kind of advice with doing business continuity. You're supposed to look both ways as you start your business to see what kind of risks and what kind of threats and what kind of vulnerabilities you have. Ideally, when you're doing your business plan. And I'll tell you why it's ideal. I was doing a workshop where I was doing a tabletop exercise. I created a fake company and I was like, your location is in the mountains. You have a warehouse at the beach. Cat 2 hurricanes coming. What do you do? And then I had them work through it. And the person was very frustrated. He's like, hold on, can we start over? Can I not have my business be right where there's going to be a hurricane? And I went, exactly. So it's much easier to figure out you don't want to be in a hurricane prone zone in advance. It's much more expensive later to move your warehouse or fix the warehouse or whatever it is that you want to do. So looking at what your risk and vulnerabilities are in advance sets you up for success in a multitude of ways because you're ready for it. And then you could also build a secure platform from which to grow because people are like, oh, I need to do this first or I need to grow more before I can do this. No, your growth stage needs the gotchas and ahas figured out first. So you can meet them in a way that it becomes maybe a mere annoyance as opposed to a catastrophe. So that is a big thing about, make sure you're looking both ways before you cross the street, because stuff's coming. There's traffic. Is the light green? Is the light red? You'll figure it out, but you should be expecting. Because a lot of these things aren't if, they're when. When is this going to happen? Because what we look at isn't just, people assume, oh, it's cyber, oh, it's risk management. Well, risk management doesn't actually do business continuity. It's a part of business continuity. It doesn't complete the task, because let's say, a common example I give is if you want to go from point A to point B, you have a 2-lane road. If you've done risk management, you have an overlay map of where the potholes are, so you know what side of the road to be on at any given time. But what if there's a rock slide? What if there's cattle on the road? What if there's an accident? If you've only done risk management, you have to stop and wait until that's cleared up. If you've done business continuity, you pull over, pop open your trunk, pull out the bucket of asphalt and the shovel you happen to have with you, fill in that pothole, and you get on your merry way. So I enable people by teaching them business continuity and having these things ready to get to their goal with the least amount of discomfort possible. So it could be, like I said, cyber could be a insider threat by somebody who just hates you, wants to destroy you. It could be an active shooter. It could be a key piece of machinery not working. It could be the warehouse winning Powerball and quitting the next day. It could be natural disasters. It could be a key leader leaving or dying. There's a whole lot of things that can happen to a company, even externally. So let's say if you are a law firm located next door to the New York Times and people don't like what you wrote and there's going to be protests, making sure that your staff can show up and your clients can show up safely, figuring that out in advance as opposed to in the moment, relieves you a lot of stress. So look both ways before you cross the street is the first piece of advice. Now, I don't know if you want me to roll into the second or the third and have a little discussion in between. So you let me know what you want to do.
Yeah, let's chat about that, because there's a lot of, I work, there's a lot of startups that come through us. We work with a lot of growth businesses that are in the growth phase. And when you're talking about looking both ways before you cross the street, we talk a lot about cash flow projection. Learning how to make sure your cash flow is good. And so you are not putting your business in this dip every month. And we're talking that, I think that's a big important one to remember. And that's a big one of looking both ways before you cross the street. Look at your accounts receivable, look at your accounts payable. Your cash flow has to be good every single month. That is not just thinking in the future. You're building the future with what you have right now. And if your cash flow is bad now, you're not going to be able to build for the future. So, Ryan, what else? What would you think about? What came to your mind when she was talking about that? You're on mute. You're muted.
Of course I'm on mute. What I'm thinking about are like, what are some things as a small business entrepreneur? What are the first few things that I could do to really put in place some some business continuity before a crisis actually occurs?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the first thing I want to address, I'm glad you said the word cash flow, Becky, because like on my LinkedIn, I said I keep your doors open and cash flowing. And I talk about flow, but not in the accounting sense per se. My cash flow is that you are actually receiving money because you are open to get it. So like you can still conduct business and get paid for it because your business isn't completely offline or shut down or closed. Because it could also be something like there's an example of a woman who didn't have her I's dotted and T's crossed in a permit for her business, and the city shut her down temporarily. Well, temporarily shut down for her was catastrophic because she still had rent to pay. She still had an employee's salary to pay. She still had insurance to pay. So she was bleeding money that entire time. It could not make any money. So that's another, catastrophe about having everything done with cash flow. Now, the early things that you could do, Ryan, is figure out, a lot of people aren't doing this stuff. I make them break it down Barney style. I do not need to be an expert in what you do. And this is where my legal background comes in, because when I was prosecutor doing court martial stuff, I would lead CID and the MPs and investigations. And I'd be like, okay, here's the picture. Let me figure it out. Let me start asking questions to fill in the blanks. And I'd like, break it down for me, Barney style, what you do. And I say it that way on purpose, because if you talk to me like an equal, you're assuming that I have the same level of intelligence and experience and expertise in what you do. So you're going to gloss over stuff. When I force them to talk to me Barney style about things, they're like, okay, well, this. I'm like, okay, what about that? And they're like, oh, I never thought about that. So I very quickly find within the first 3 to 5 minutes some critical failure points. And that could be, well, how it could be based on supply chain flow, like who your vendors are, what you're relying on. It's like, okay, so how do you do this? Did you figure out a backup in case that's not available? They're like, no. I said, okay, that's the first thing we need to do. So I will take people through things. So start breaking down Barney style, what it is you do, and then see not just your 4 walls, the whole ecosystem that creates the ability for you to make money. How secure is that? Is it vulnerable to any kind of disruption? Because if your stuff's in, Houston, which gets hammered by hurricanes, and all your suppliers are located there, maybe diversify. Maybe find one that's not in hurricane zone.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's an important point of making sure that you can move. And you worked with a couple of businesses within the hurricane season in North Carolina, right? And there was one business, I think I remember you telling me that you talked them into moving some inventory up out of the flood zone.
Mm-hmm.
And it saved their business because they were, even though they had a separate warehouse up away from where they were, their stuff was saved because they moved it. They listened. They actually listened.
That's the thing, listening. So that's the other thing. I'll tell people having a plan doesn't make you more resilient. It's the process that you go through making the plan and then training and exercising on it, because there are companies, compliance products companies, that will do for you a business continuity plan, but it is not tailored. It's a tick the box, makes the auditor go away. And the clients of mine I've seen that have them, I'm like, I know you have never touched this. They're like, no, I have. I said, no, you haven't. Because first of all, in the POCs for your vendors, your Microsoft Azure POC is no reply at Microsoft.com.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. Or you're supposed to sign it every year that you've read it. This has never been signed and it's 4 years old. So I know you've never read it. And they're like, all right, yeah, I guess I never read it. Just having it doesn't make you more secure. You have to actually train on it, use it, and going through the process of figuring it out with me, because they're like, oh, I never thought about that. Because even when I have a plan with a client who's great to work with, the first time I put them through a tabletop exercise, they're terrible. They're like, oh, I guess we do this. And I'm like, or you can do the thing that they're like, oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, that too. And so I actually like it too when the tabletop exercises fail, because they figure out what they need to work on. And then I tweak what doesn't work. And I go, I made an assumption you would understand this. This needs to be fixed. Let me fix it. And then now you have a much better plan. And that's kind of, that'll segue nicely into the second piece of life advice that people get all the time is an ounce of prevention equals a pound of cure. So investing in all this stuff is vitally important in a way that you may not really appreciate, because the statistic is for every $1 you spend in preparation, you save $7 in the back end in mitigation. So investing early means it's cheaper. The cost of not investing is everything is more expensive later, because there's a demand, there's a market where they're going to push up prices for these things. And if you don't have it sorted in advance, even if you don't need it right now, you get the contract in advance with, say, like snowplow removal. If you needed to have your snow removed, it's better to get that contract in the summer than the day before a snowstorm's about to hit, because of course everybody's calling that person, and it's like, well, I don't have enough time in the day to do this, so I'm going to up my prices. Whoever can afford me gets it. The other type of expense can be you're losing time, which means you're losing market share. And if what you have is offered other places, your clients may not be that loyal to you. They're going to go somewhere else and get it. So you may have lost that client permanently because you were not available. So there's also your reputation that could be hit from something like this. And then ultimately, if you can't make your clients happy, you can't be open, you may have your business death. it may die. Your dream is going to die because there were things that could have been done early that weren't done. Again, at base, business continuity can be very boring and time consuming in advance. But what you get afterwards is so much better, because trust me, when there was an ice storm coming through this winter, I prepped days in advance. I had all my food made. I had my generators charged. I had all this stuff. It was a pain in the butt. But then for when the storm comes, I'm like, I'm ready. I don't have to worry. I'm not stressing because I did the stress in advance. So when it's showtime, I'm good. The same thing happened with Helene. I prepped in advance. I did not know it was going to be as bad because I did not have the knowledge that our infrastructure was so terrible and that our local authorities didn't really know what they were doing. But I had planned for 3 to 4 days without power and water. It wound up being more like 8 days without power and 14 days without running water. And it wasn't another 54 until we had potable water. But I was able to pivot because I had prepared pretty well early on before it happened. So trust me, that ounce of prevention is so much worth that pound of cure. The result in there is untold, especially if you're going to be impacted by something. Just to have it be like, oh, I got this. We're all good. Very important.
Wow. I think of the plan is nothing. Planning is everything. The plan is nothing. So you really do have to walk through, the planning process. And as you're going through it, you can really it enables you to visualize the future and potential, things that may happen. In that way, when it does happen, you can react, a little quicker and maybe better.
Right.
I don't know. I'm just thinking. And calmer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Calm under fire.
Yes. So, great at reacting. I'm like, that's a skill set that is probably overrated, because if you think like I can do nothing and react great, no, because you're gonna be so under the stress of the event, you're gonna miss obvious things. So, not to doing the things that protect you, you're gonna be like, oh, I never thought about that, because you're stressed. Think about it in advance during, peacetime, and then when showtime, you're like, all right, I already thought this out. I know what to do. Here's my list. Got it. And then I also mentioned, when you realize how much stuff is in your control, it's insane. And that's part of why I wrote the second book. So I was like, yeah, you're assuming people are coming in to help you. No, you need to be proactive in putting yourself in that best position. So David Goggins, everybody loves him. He gets paid an insane amount of money to tell you what I'm going to tell you for free. Okay. So it's all leadership stuff. And he's like, he never fails. And to a point, he's right. He never fails. Even if he does not achieve his goal, he did everything physically in his power to make it that he succeeds. If he doesn't succeed, it means it was out of his power. It was out of his control. So having that recognition of what actually is in your control, what you can do, is a huge, huge advantage with being successful and being able to ride through anything that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, no. And as you're talking about this, and you mentioned something of one of the guys had it all in his head, like the COO coming back to you and being like, oh, he's got it all in his head. So this may go without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you do a continuity plan, make sure you tell other people about it and you train them on it as well, so that they can help you execute on the plan that you've created. Because if you create the plan and that's it, and you're the only one that knows what the plan is, don't complain when everyone's coming to you with 5 million questions.
Yeah,
in a crisis, right?
With 2 people I've worked with, where I was like, oh, you have some SOPs, but the person I originally asked for this, like, oh, we don't have any SOPs. And that was the person in charge of getting me all the documents for auditing. And I was like, oh, well, you do. I'm pretty sure you do, because your bosses told me that they were updating the SOP, so they exist in some format somewhere. And then when, I got this trove of stuff, I was like, okay, this is kind of an SOP, but it doesn't matter if your team doesn't know it exists. Kind of like with accountability with one firm I worked with, I said, who's in charge of calling this or authorizing this? She's like, oh, we all kind of are responsible. I go, no, because if everybody's responsible for it, nobody is, because that means somebody is assuming somebody else is doing it. I don't have to do this because she's got it or he's taking care of this. And meanwhile, that person's like, oh, somebody else is taking care of it because, we're all doing this. It has to be assigned to a person. They have to be aware. That's where things start falling through the cracks, where it's like, oh yeah, we got this. Do you? If nobody knows about it and nobody's responsible, then you might as well not have it at all. In effect, you don't have it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's totally true. And then when you're using an inadequate plan or something that's not really fitting the bill for whatever you need,
Yep.
you can do everything you can to execute on that plan. But if it's not good enough, you're not going to get the result you're thinking you're going to get.
Right. And to that point, it's going to sound harsh, but after Helene, I was like, all these companies small businesses, breweries, small, like people who took second and third mortgages on their house, throwing up GoFundMes because they didn't do business continuity. I'm like, a GoFundMe is not a continuity plan. It is a hope that other people are going to save you because you hadn't done the work. And I'm not blaming them for having not done the work. It's like I said, I started off with saying a lot of them don't know what this is. And there's even grant opportunities, free money. I wrote about in my second book, how to actually get free money. You register with the Readiness for Resiliency grant. And if you are ever in a disaster declared area, they will reach out to you, be like, did you suffer? I did. Great. Here's $5,000 to help you recover. Now, some people may think that's not a lot, but you have two people who are trying to pay like two people on staff. $5,000 goes a long way. So
yeah, it really does. And it can make the difference between staying in business or not.
Yeah. And that's a lot of the stuff is like, a favorite phrase in the military that I always loved is you don't know what you don't know. But once you know, you're kind of responsible for doing something about it. So all you listeners.
That's true. So I wonder, we're talking about small businesses. If a small business just had one day and they had maybe $500, what would be a good starting point for them to start down this path of having a business continuity plan?
Well, they could spend 40 of that and get my books and help them.
There you go.
But other than that, honestly, it's not so much the money. If you're doing this on your own to get to a 60-ish% solution, you don't need to invest much money. It's the time and effort that goes into it. So, and that's why it's harder when you don't have a consultant helping you. If you want to dedicate all the time and energy to doing it without the guidance, it is harder, but it can be done. There's a lot of low-lying fruit. There's a lot of stuff that you can double check and triple check. It's a lot of phone calls. So I gave a list. So the various groups I work with, they can be one who runs a networking group. It could be another who has, 85 employees and they manufacture something in over 4 different locations. There's a huge swath. If it's super, super small, I'm like, okay, well, I don't need to do a full audit. Like we already had a conversation about your stuff. These are the things you need to do. Here's your tasks. You need to actually start executing on the task. And they're like, I feel overwhelmed. I'm like, if you honestly sit down, took a breath and look at it, what I'm asking you to do is not actually very labor intensive. You can knock off a lot of this within an hour or two of focus. So it's not that hard. It's really not. And it's not expensive. What's more expensive is not doing it. Or paying a compliance products company to do it because you just wasted money because it's not tailored to you. It's not going to work. And it gives you a false sense of security that you actually don't have.
And the answer may be similar, but let's say I'm a solopreneur. Mm-hmm. What are some things that I could do to protect myself?
So, I mean, things that I've done is for my sister, she has all my information for personal and business. So if something were to happen to me, she knows where everything is and how to send out information about who to contact if like my current clients and any former clients, and then anybody who, if she may, I don't update her on all my stuff, but I'm like, this is how you get into my email account. You'll see this here. And I had a plan for whether or not, if I died, let's say on a trip, did I have my laptop with me or not? So I had to do two levels. I had to do, if my laptop exists, all the passwords and logins are really easy. They're saved. Just go in. If they don't, here, print it out, because I'm not sending you this via email, are my passwords and my logins for everything. So this is where it is in my house. This is, so for solopreneurs, that's one of the things, is making sure. And actually, one of the things I used to talk about more, like people, and it might be appropriate for people who have their business entirely on Facebook, get your stuff offline. Get your backups offline, because I told somebody about this and she did not listen to me. And I had to do some kind of business with her. I was a client. So I said, hey, I need you to respond to this. And she ghosted for like a month. Well, she wasn't ghosting. When I found out, what had happened was she got put in Facebook jail because something was flagged. And she couldn't contact people for a month, and not even her clients. So I'm like, do you know how bad that makes you look? Because you had no way of contacting anybody for a month. You just ghosted. I moved on to somebody else, and I'm sure they did too. But even if they didn't, you look terrible, especially because I told you to get offline. You went, okay, yeah, I'll get around to that. No, don't get around to it. Do it, because you don't know when that's going to happen.
Well, I was going to ask you earlier how you felt about the changing landscape with the rise of AI and other technologies. So you kind of really touched a little bit on that, but what are your thoughts on remote work as it pertains to business continuity, and also the overall rise of AI and how that could affect, what we're doing as entrepreneurs?
So remote work, I think, is fine. I think you need to plan for it, though. So I talked to a CFO once, asking him, so what keeps you up at night? He said, fishing. I said, okay, let's talk about it. What do you have to prevent? What kind of training you're doing? I said, all right, let's talk about your cyber posture beyond that. Are you using VPNs, MFA? He's like, yep. I said, cool. Let's move on to your physical structure, because business continuity, I call it the 4 Ps. You have the people, you have your premises, your processes, and your providers, your third-party providers. And he goes, oh, we're fine. And because I'm a recovering lawyer, right? Because I don't say, well, I'm a recovering lawyer. I don't accept people's answers flat out without an explanation. I go, so you have a really robust plan for your physical structure? He goes, no, we're fully remote. I'm like, how many employees do you have? 120. I said, okay, cool. Are they all in your state or elsewhere? Oh, they're all over the US. I said, are they clustered anywhere? Tampa, Houston, North Carolina coast. Oh, we have 10 in the North Carolina coast. I said, do you know why I'm asking you? And he went, no. I said, hurricanes? And he went, oh, yes. Yeah, like a couple years ago, hurricane came through North Carolina, and there were a couple of they couldn't work for like 2 weeks. I went, okay. So remember I asked you about your physical structure security? He goes, yeah. And he said, you didn't have to worry about it. He goes, yeah. I go, you have 120 to worry about. And I literally watched the blood drain from his face, because he never considered that each home is its own business location. And that's what I tell people all the time, because even with workers' comp, if they're working from home, they could still suffer something regarding workers' comp. So there's a lot there. That's also where my, even though I'm a recovering lawyer, my legal brain is still there. So I'm looking at legal stuff to tell clients to be worried about and what they need to fix. Now, with respect to AI, I hate AI. I'm staunchly anti-AI for a plethora of reasons. And I had a friend who is a cybersecurity expert who just finished writing his manuscript for an AI risk governance book, and he had me pre-read it. And it convinced me that paid for AI is not the worst, as long as appropriate guardrails are on it. And most people don't even know that you need to have those guardrails. But I said to him, the thing is, though, I don't want to help these billionaires stay rich, and I don't want to destroy the planet at the same time. So I'm still happy reading every document. And because I've seen so many things where I'm like, I don't use AI. I don't even use it to summarize anything, but I've seen summaries. I'm like, it missed this, it missed this, it missed this. So like even my audit, my report said to a client, okay, now that we've gone through this, what's your status on this? She's like, what? I said, your status on this. She's like, I go, it's in the audit. Do you want, so I put the audit report through ChatGPT, and it created a, to-do list from there, and that's not in it. And I go, let me see what it spit out. I go, okay, it only understood the next steps. It did not understand the top section where it said, these are problems that need to be fixed. So it is not the great tool that people think it is all the time. So I'm firmly against anything with AI.
Yeah. So a question that I have for you, and then I know you have one more section that you want to cover. Um, how does somebody, if somebody's going to work with you, like what does a business do to prepare? Like what should they prepare? What documents should they pull together? What should they have ready to meet with somebody to say, okay, I'm ready to start my continuity planning?
So it's going to be vendor contracts because I got the 4 Ps. I'm looking at 4 different areas. So how resilient your vendors are, because it's one thing when you think you have a backup to something, but if everything is running on Azure platform, because you may not look that deep, because I do look that deep. You're like, oh, I have Azure as my cloud, but I have this for something else. And it's like, you know that runs on Azure, right? So if Azure is down, you don't have that. And they're like, oh. So all your vendor contracts, SOPs, I need to see any kind of previous audits and their results. If you have a commercial lease, I want to see that. I want to see any kind of governance documents. There's so much. Now that the list is like 10 bullet points long, and then I'll add to it based on also who I'm talking to and what their business is. So if it's a nonprofit, I said, I want to see your, I'm sure there's some kind of agreement you have when you get donations from big groups, like named things. So I need to see what those are, because if you have something that you're required to provide, I want to make sure that you're going to always be able to provide that regardless of what goes on. So I make them ready for that. So I'm looking at everything. I'm going through every single thing about your business. And people say that they become much better business owners as a result, because not only have they discovered things they didn't know were existing holes in their business, but they feel stronger going forward, knowing what to do next.
Yeah. Which is why working with somebody like you is so important, because they will see the holes that you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to be told their baby's like ugly, right? But sometimes you just need to put another dress on it or something. And so having somebody that has those eyes to say, here's this issue, you're not going to see that when you think you do. You're not going to see everything that you need to.
Yeah.
So anyway, I want you to go to your final talking point here. I'm excited about this one.
This one is the title. You don't drive on a donut. So where that comes from, as I use as an example for a potential client, the 3 types of people that do business continuity as a business owner is a forward-leading leader who wants to be agile, prepared in advance. Then there is someone being forced to by an outside entity. So as a condition of a purchase of their business, because I've seen it, Berkshire Hathaway will require, no matter how small your business is, for you to produce a business continuity plan and due diligence. It could be to get an insurance policy. It could be to get a bank loan. And another note I want to make there, I spoke to representatives at the Veteran Institute of Procurement Training from M&T Bank and Bank of America. If you need a huge capital injection to get a government procurement contract or something else to grow your business, having a continuity plan puts you in the yes column for them, because it shows them that you've, first of all, done the work of their risk underwriters, but secondly, they say there's 5 C's for credit for them to approve you for a loan. There's a secret 6C that's not so secret. It's competence that you're going to be around in 10 years to keep paying them back. And having a continuity plan, they're like, definitely gets you into a yes. So there's that. And then the third type of person that comes to me is somebody standing on a burning platform saying, what do I do now? And it's this one where this piece of advice came from. So it was a CEO of a nonprofit that's run by a board, and their building blew up from a gas leak in February. And it was their most forward-facing public building that they did a lot of intake for. And their continuity plan, they had one, was 10 years old. And I said, they're supposed to be updated regularly, hopefully annually if there's something like big going on, but especially if something big happens. And prior to the building blowing up, 3 years ago, that building flooded. Then you had COVID, right? So I'm like, you've had massive, big, huge things. This should have been updated a while ago and multiple times. And the CEO is like, yeah, no, I agree. But the board wants to wait until the new building is done before they want to do another continuity plan. And I was like, so basically you guys are planning to take a cross-country trip. And in New Jersey, you get a flat and you put on a donut and the board wants you to make it all the way to California on the donut. And you're like, let's just go to the first service shop and get a new tire so we can actually get to California. Donuts are not designed to be driven on for very long periods of time or at any high rate of speed on high. Like, so don't drive on a donut. She's like, that's a good point. That's where that piece of advice came from. It makes sense. It makes sense when it applies in your life, but when you apply it to your business, for some reason, there's a disconnect. There shouldn't be the disconnect. I just connected it for you.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I want to share that this is a different perspective of how to view your business. We work with our native nations here that are in Utah. And when we were doing a training with them, a business training, we had to change some of the language in it, because in Navajo, there's not a word for entity, like business entity. And so when you create a new business, it's a new thing, it's a new entity. And when we were talking with them about that, they were kind of like, we don't have a word that translates into Navajo for that. And so what we did was we talked about the business as if they were creating a new human, a new person. And that's essentially what you are doing when you're creating a business, right? Because it is a separate entity. Whether you think it's living, breathing or not, it is. It still needs food, water, and shelter. Same thing as what a human being needs to thrive and survive. And so when you think through all of those things, if you think through your business as this is my child, my whatever, my favorite dog, whatever, however you like to think about it, what are you going to do to provide food, water, shelter? And the shelter part is creating this continuity plan. So that why would you wouldn't just not have shelter, wouldn't provide food for a human being. Why would you starve your business of those things?
Yeah, and that actually brings up something that I mentioned the other day. Speaking specifically to people who want to sell their business, they're like, oh, in 5 years, I'm going to do this. And I'm like, well, it's great if the universe went according to your plan, but you need to have a business in 5 years. Plus, the business you have today is 5 years. Let's say it's 5 years old. It's then 10 years old 5 years from now. If it is still wearing the same clothes and fitting in the same clothes, or a 5-year-old as a 10-year-old, something's gone wrong. You've either been malnourished, you've been abused. There's a whole lot of problems. So it needs to be grown, because you should not have the same business 5 years, because I certainly don't. Where I was 4 years, I'm about to hit 5 years. Where I was 4 years ago, even if I get rejected today from a potential client, I still see it as a win, because EAS of 4 years ago would never even been invited into the room to even have that conversation. So it's always growing, and you have to invest in it, and you have to make sure, like, again, when I talked about people, I'm like, why is your car more important than your business? Like, it's not. I'm like, you're going to make sure that your car is protected, but you're not doing anything for your business. That's part of me showing that the baby's ugly, which, I will, but.
That's awesome. Well, and that's the things that I think is really important. And this is why I wanted to have this discussion with you, is because we see a lot of businesses that are starting out. We see a lot of businesses that are growing. And one of the things I ask in our Strive program is like, what are you doing to make sure that you can survive after you start? Because there's not a lot of funding available for somebody who's in the first 2 years of business. And if you're not planning to, how are you going to plan to stay in business for those first 2 years? Because a bank, if you're going for a traditional bank loan or SBA loan, you have to be in business for 2 years. You have to have 2 years minimum tax returns. So what does your preparation look like for that? What are you doing to feed your business? And you're right. The having a kid in a 3T toddler should not be fitting in on a 7-year-old. So I like that example.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a good example.
Another, it came in my brain like 3 times in the last 7 seconds. Go ahead. Ryan, were you going to say something? I'll let it try to come back.
Oh, you put me on the spot. Let's see. Questions. Okay. What's one continuity tool? Are there tools for business continuity? And if so, what is one business continuity tool that entrepreneurs should be implementing today?
Well, a tool, so to speak. The big, huge corporations have tools. So they have a full-time staff that do this. They call it enterprise resilience. They do have tracker tools. So those are annual subscription of over $250,000 a year. So no, I would not tell any solopreneur. No, it's actually just having one of the tools is, and I hate to do this because I'm not the Becky, back me up. I am not the biggest shill of my stuff, right? It's not something I normally do, but there is a worksheet with the first book that gets you, it's just, what you need to fill in and think out of what your risk looks like, putting your POCs and your all in one place. So you have, that's the other thing too, is having your documents in one place and both have them secured on your computer, laptop, cloud, but also offline. I do, for mine, I have a hard drive that I back up everything to as well. So I don't trust a lot of internet, and I have, my phone is on a different provider than my house. So I have a backup for any kind of meeting or phone I need to do because, yeah.
Yeah, and that came in handy. I remember last year you had some storms come through and you were out without power for a while, and your home phone was down, but your cell phone still worked, or vice versa. I can't remember which one it was. So that's a great example. So any questions out there, feel free to ask. We've got 8 minutes left. Oh, Erica, go ahead.
I now remembered what I wanted to say.
Good.
Right. So when I talked about the 3 types of people who come to me who do business continuity, the forward-leading leader, the person staying on a burning platform saying, what do I do now? And that's always if you can do something now. And then the person who's being forced to. Where are you in that? Who are you identifying with? Which one are you? Because I know you all want to think that you're the forward-leading leader, but if you're not taking action, you're probably going to be the one who's being forced, which means you don't have agency. You're doing it against your will by somebody else's terms, or you're standing on the SOL hill being like, I hope to God I can do something and please help me. And, I joke, but I'm also kind of serious. If we're in talks about you being a client and then you're like, well, I need some time to think about this. And then you disappear for a while and then you come back and something has happened. I'm like, how much I told you it cost then is very different now because it's an I told you so tax. I have to clean up the mess. Everything is cheaper when it's done in peacetime than after the fact.
That ounce of prevention. Yeah. Awesome. So all of you listening today, you should get your stuff together. I don't like saying should. Nobody likes to get should on, but it's something that really needs to take place in a business. You have to take these things to heart because if you're planning on being in business in 5 years, 10 years, even 3 years, what are you doing today to make sure that that is the case? Because you know what it's like, especially if you have employees, you're the one that has to walk through and look them in the eyes and know that you can make payroll before you pay yourself. So give yourself some room to sleep at night. Give yourself some space in your head so you can have peace. Go ahead, Erica.
You have a good point too, because I had somebody recently, I made the point, the business owner wanted to go on vacation, but she's like, this new project is kicking off. I have to be there. Why? If you trained your staff, you don't need to be there. She's like, well, because this. I said, you know what? And what I do, I don't care why. I care what. The what is you're not available. Okay. So if your daughter had to go to the ER, are you going to be like, hold on, honey, doc, you got this. I got to go back to the office. That's not going to happen. That is never going to be happening. It's not an option. Just because you're on vacation, why is that different? The end result is you're not there and you're not available. So if you know how to train your team right and have them ready, because if you tell them also it's in the realm of possibilities, this jacked up thing may happen, they're not going to be freaking out. They can be like, oh, this is exactly what she said could happen. And this is what we need to do. I also enable you to have a good life by taking vacations. Because again, who cares why, the what? Cross apply that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because a lot of people don't think about vacation as being something that needs continuity planning. But it sucks when you go on vacation and you're still having to work. Like, telling your family, telling your friends, oh, hold on, I'll catch up with you later. Even if you have to go for a work trip or whatever, go so you can be present where you are. And you can't do that without having some kind of continuity going on. Awesome. Great information, Erica. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any final words of wisdom you want to share with the group?
You can, two things. You can do this. Like I said, it's going to be a pain in the butt. You don't really need any money to invest in it. It's time and effort and knowing what to do. But also, please stop being brainwashed by the marketing people who tell you that marketing is the end and all being of marketing. Like this, that's not the primary thing you need. You need to be able to actually open your doors to keep your cash flowing. It's not, oh, I need to do marketing first. I need to do this first. You need to have a business that is running and operational first for all that other stuff you're investing into pay dividends. So people get the order wrong. I need to do marketing first so I get clients who pay me money so I could pay you. Do the business continuity first. Don't even pay me. Just do it on your own. Do it first so you could still be operational. And like you said, Vicki, it's not just about your bank account. You have employees you have a moral obligation to. Because if it's a hobby, if it's something you're not investing in and not serious about, tell the people you're hiring this is a hobby for you. There should be some kind of security for them and then your clients.
Yeah, that's amazing. Awesome. Thank you. Great final thoughts. Ryan, do you want to close us out with telling us what's coming up with Veterans Social Summit a little bit?
Sure. I mean, the main thing is go to 26.veterансocialsummit.com and register for the virtually everywhere that there is internet event on 9 and 10 September. We have I think we're going to have about 50 speakers in September across 4 virtual stages. And they're going to be bringing nuclear value, Becky. I mean, this is going to be huge. This is year 6 of the Vet Social, and really excited. I mean, last September, I didn't think we could. I was just blown away by the impact that so many people are bringing, like Erica today, bringing to the veteran community. It's awesome to see it. So that's mainly what's going on. But we have these webinars that are powered by awesome organizations like the Utah Veteran Business Resource Center. Thank you. And when is our next one? Do you know? I put you on the spot.
No, well,
next month.
Yes, it is next month. It's in a month, but we have a couple of things coming up. We have somebody. Well, I want to first say Erica was phenomenal today.
Oh yeah,
and
amazing.
When you get a chance to hear her speak, she really makes it engaging and fun, and really grateful to her and her expertise today. But we have some great speakers coming up. We're going to have a workshop kind of thing on using the government surplus program to help you save money on your business, so you're not spending what you think you have to. It's very surprising. You'll be surprised and shocked at how much money you can save. We also have an individual, Josh Emfield, who's done a lot of pitch preparations with people. He is a former chief of staff to a congressman here that served in Utah. A lot of wisdom there. He's going to talk about how to prepare to give your pitches, because I think we're in pitch season really for these other conferences coming up. And then we have some other things going on that we'll be talking about. Christopher from our office is going to share some insights on how to properly, as you heard Erica say, properly use AI in your business, so you're not giving your farm away or dropping your trade secrets on the internet without knowing it. And there's just a lot of info that's coming down the pipeline. So keep an eye out for the emails, keep an eye out for the social media posts. Really grateful for all of you sticking it out with us today, and thanks for being here.
All right, take care. Be safe out there.
Bye, everybody.